Hey, what's up guys? Diesel Dog here, back with another video on the DTF Motorsports YouTube channel. We have the 22 6.7 Powerstroke back in here. If you've seen my videos before, I've done quite a bit of work to this truck when it was next to new. It's still a really new truck, 2022. I didn't catch the miles when I first pulled it in here, but I'll look at it in a little bit. It's pretty low. I'd be surprised if it has 10,000 miles on it, but it's got a lot of work done to it. Won't go into the details, but there's videos of me doing the S&S disaster prevention kit on this truck. He's had great luck with this truck, no issues at all. He loves it, loves the power of it. There's a couple things we're going to change. We're going to put a muffler on it because towing it's kind of loud, which I totally understand. I feel the same way about my truck, so we're going to be adding a muffler to it, and we are switching over to the new 2022 S&S DCR kit. The DCR kit's been out for a little while, but on S&S's website, it said it would fit 11 to 19. So I wasn't sure what the deal was, why it wouldn't fit the 20 pluses. So I reached out to them. They said it would fit, but it took some manipulation of the lines and stuff. But they said if we waited a couple weeks, they would have the actual kit that's made all the way up to fit all up to the 22s. So we ordered that as soon as it was released. He's had it for, a couple weeks now, but I've been busy, so he's been busy, I've been busy. So we finally got the truck in here. We got the S&S DCR kit for this thing. So we're gonna go ahead and tear this thing apart and switch over to the DCR so this truck can have a long, happy life. Also, while it's here, we're gonna spice up the engine bay a little bit. We're gonna do some powder coat. I'm not 100% sure on the color yet, but I'll post some videos of throwing some powder coat on this thing. We're gonna do the cold side and hot side pipe on it, and since the 20 pluses have the aluminum upper intake, we're gonna powder coat that also, so stay tuned. Here we have it. I haven't even opened up the box yet other than to pull the instructions out, but 2022 DCR for the 6.7 Powerstroke. I believe this one actually has the updated label on it now. Yep, 11 to 22 6.7 Powerstroke. Comes with phenomenal instructions. The instructions when I did the disaster kit on this truck were amazing. So as long as you read those instructions, you will know how to do this. They don't miss anything. They have all the tools laid out in the beginning, step by step, tell you what to do. So great instructions on this. So I'm not gonna open up the box yet, go through all the parts. I'll go through that as we go. But I'm gonna go ahead and pop the hood and start taking this thing apart. I'll probably just do more of a time lapse taking it apart because I've done tons of other videos on how to remove, basically the upper and lower intake on these trucks. So it'll be more of a time lapse. I'll go through and point out what you got to do, but then I'll probably just set up the camera on a tripod and take off all the intake and upper and lower intake and all that stuff. So let's dig into it. So an important step when opening up the fuel systems on these 6.7s, before you take anything apart, go through and blow out the engine bay as best you can. I just took compressed air and a blowgun and blew out everything underneath here. It's pretty clean because it is such a new truck, but still, even if it's new, go through and blow it all out really good because you don't want to have dust and dirt and debris flying around when you got the fuel system opened up. So right now is the best time to do that. So I already went through and did all that. So now I'm going to remove the air intake. I'll probably leave the box here, just remove the tube. Upper and lower intake, cold side pipe, and hot side pipe. Go through and take all this out of the way. And then I'll probably jump back into filming because that's when we'll start messing with the fuel bowl and fuel lines and stuff like that. So go ahead and dig into it. Okay, so a couple of quick things. Show you what I'm taking off here. I undid the clamp for the air intake tube there, and I already loosened up the clamp for the filter, so I'm gonna pull that off. Loosen up the clamps on the cold side pipe here. Loosen up the clamp for the hot side pipe. Popped that off. I pulled the Christmas trees out for this coolant line. There's one there, one on top of the intake over there, and one right here. I'm gonna pull it off the bottle. I'm gonna clamp that off with a pair of needle nose pliers, and then you can flip all these coolant lines off to the side. I also pull this vacuum line here and here, that I'm not fighting with that. So I'm gonna go through and take these parts off, and then we'll move on to the upper and lower intake. Also, before you pop this line off for the coolant bottle, unscrew your cap and relieve the pressure out of that so you're not blowing coolant all over the place. Okay, so now that we have the intake tube off and the cold side and hot side pipe off, now we can remove the upper and lower intake. You can get these out of here. You gotta take the upper and lower out at the same time. You can take them out without messing with the wiper cowl. And one other thing I do to make it easier taking these out, especially because I'm gonna be taking it off anyway, this fuel filter, I'm gonna disconnect the lines, remove the filter in the housing here, and that'll give me a lot more room to pull it out of there. Also, when you go to pull it out, disconnect this sensor right here so you don't get hung up on that. And then if you still have the butterfly valve here, remove that because that'll get hung up right here. I'm probably actually going to still take this piece off even though it's smaller. I'm just worried about it still getting hung up here. So yeah, this is a Mexico truck, so there's a few things that I don't have to worry about. But the other thing you got to do is unplug that sensor, disconnect your wires here. I had the EGT probe right there, so I'll pop that off. And so now I'm going to go ahead and, like I said, disconnect that fuel filter, remove the housing there, and then pull the upper and lower intake. Also, one other thing I forgot is you have to disconnect this hose here for the crankcase vent. You're supposed to be able to just twist this and it'll pop off. I've never had luck doing that. I always just take a pick and put it in where these tabs are. Just if you pry two of them up, you can usually wiggle past the third one. So yeah, usually this heat shrinks over it, pull that back, pry two of those tabs up, and then you should be able to pop this off. I might actually talk to this customer and see if he wants to not have this put back on since we'll have some stuff taken apart. But like I said, it's a low mileage truck, so he shouldn't have an issue if I do put it back on. But while we're here, you know what they say, while in Rome. So all right, let's keep moving forward. All right, so like I said, next I'm gonna pull this, disconnect these lines here and remove this filter housing. I'm gonna tuck some rags down in here as best I can, try to catch any residual fuel that comes out of these lines. Don't wanna mess all over this new truck. All right, so this first one, 2 green tabs. It's hard to explain on video since I have you guys far away, but you're gonna push those green tabs away from the fuel filter housing and then push this up. Cooperate with me. Ooh. This is so easy every other time I do it. Let me get a flat screwdriver. There we go. Pop that one off. This one has 2 blue buttons. You squeeze them together, and I like to push the line towards the filter just to make sure it unclips all the way and then pull it off. Just like that. You got a little bit of fuel drip there. And this one, let's see. And you just push that clip out like that. There we go. And this fuel filter, give it a half turn, lean it back, and it's out. I'll set this fuel filter down somewhere real quick. Okay, so now there is 4, I believe they're 8mm bolts that hold this thing on, so I'm gonna pull those out. And then we can start pulling the bolt out for the upper intake. Yep, so they are 8mm. This last one is tricky to get to here in the front. Extension in. All right, so I'm just gonna throw my bolts in this bowl here and set that on the bench. All right, so next is the upper and lower intake. I'll do a quick close-up where the bolts are and stuff. Pull you guys in real quick. Okay, so I wanted to give you guys a close-up where those bolts are for the fuel filter housing. So there's one right next to your crankcase vent filter, be in line with your the back of your upper intake there. And then there's one that holds this clamp down and then goes into the intake plenum. There's one right here in front of the sensor. That's the one you kind of got to like pull these lines back to get to. And then there's that one right there on this boss, which is straight in front of your crankcase vent filter. So I'm gonna do a close up of that. And these are your fittings. Like I said, this green one, got these two tabs you pull back and push up. Where's the middle one at? Middle one's right here. There's two blue buttons, push them together, pop this thing out. And this white one, these two clips you pull out, or pinch together, and push towards your firewall, and that one will pop right out. So, give you guys a close up of that before I move on. But, so now we're going on to the intake. I did pop this black piece off that goes to your cold side pipe. It's just a couple Allen head bolts that go in there. In my case, they were 5mm Allen heads. So I popped those off. I did start taking some of these intake bolts out. Got 10mm here, 10mm here, 10mm here. And then there was a 10mm nut on top of the stud that holds that line on. And also a 10mm bolt. Right, it was right there, holding that bracket onto there. Also part of this dipstick tube. So then we got this one, I believe is, I don't know if that one's a 10 or 12. I'll post it on the video when I go to post it. But then the rest of them are 8mm there, 2 in the back, 2 8mm there, and same thing, 2 in the back. And then also you want to remove these 8mm bolts that hold this guard on. So you can disconnect the sensor here and then pull your wiring harness there. So I'm gonna go ahead and put you guys on time lapse while I go through and pull the rest of these bolts, because it does take a little bit of time getting those rear 8mm. Okay, so we have our upper and lower intake pulled. One thing I did forget to mention is don't forget to loosen the clamp that goes to the inlet of the turbo. It's a 7mm, just a band clamp that goes around there. It's one thing I did forget to mention. Yeah, so now we can start going through the instructions for the DCR swap. This is the first time I've ever done this, so I'm definitely gonna read over those instructions pretty good before I dive into this. But yeah, I'll drag you guys along for the process. Okay, so next thing I'm gonna do to free up more space, because this truck did have the S&S disaster prevention kit on it, I'm gonna go ahead and remove the filter housing and the lines, because the next step I have to do, I'm not sure if I can get it on video. Yeah, I can't quite get down there. You can kind of see it right there. So, right my finger's pointing back there, there's a 5/16 fuel disconnect line. I have to do that to pull this line off the head there. So, to give myself more space, I am going to remove this fuel filter housing first. Okay, so I removed my S&S disaster prevention kit. There's just one Allen bolt that goes through the cowl, and then disconnected the 2 lines that come off of it. I just had to pop those clips on the cowl to get to that bolt. So that's removed. So I'm just gonna give it a shot of this fitting here. So you have that. Down there I have to use a 5/16 fuel line disconnect tool, just something like this, nothing fancy. So I'm gonna try to reach down in there and get that disconnected. And then, whoop, and then have to pull that one bolt there, and then we'll be able to remove those return lines there. Okay guys, so I did get this rear fuel line disconnected here. It was kind of tricky. I'll show you what I did here. I'm assuming a lot of you probably have this tool. So this is just the Harbor Freight fuel line quick connect tools. These actually work very well. I've used these a lot and never had issues with them. But the way the boss is shaped around that fuel line, you can't get this in there as one piece. So I took the snap ring out, so you could split this thing in half, put it in there one piece at a time, and that line popped right off. So that's a little tip for you guys if you have these same tools. So next thing you gotta do, there's a bolt that holds this line on over here. You can see that bracket is. I removed that bolt, and then the instructions next say to remove this, and you can remove these lines out of the CP4 here. I'm gonna leave them in here for now because there's other work I gotta do, and I don't wanna get any contaminants in this because that CP4 is still good. It's a really low mile truck, so I mean, I don't know what his plans are with it, but I don't want to risk it getting any contaminants in it if he has any plans for it. So gonna leave those lines on for now, and we're going to remove this fan assembly. I already broke it loose. I use a 1 7/8 wrench, or you'll have to get the fan tool, and then I put an Allen wrench. Let's see if I can get a light down here. In the front of that pulley, there's a couple holes. I put an Allen wrench in there and then put it up against the tensioner pulley, and it'll push that tensioner pulley down, but it'll stop eventually, and then that nut will break loose. If you don't have either the right tools or the tools I just listed off, you can always use an air hammer to get that off. I don't like doing that just because it messes up that nut, and then, you know, down the road in the future, if someone does try to do it using the right tools, they're not gonna be able to use the right tools because that nut's all messed up. So I just try not to damage anything if I don't have to. Then there's a, put a bad shadow on here, sorry. There's a bolt right there you gotta take off that goes to the bracket for this plug. You gotta undo that plug, and there's a, you can see that hole there. There was a retaining clip there, little Christmas tree thing. You gotta pry that off too. And then you can spin this fan assembly off and lean it up against the radiator. I'm gonna try to get some cardboard or something in there so I don't have to worry about bending up the fins on that radiator too. So I'm gonna go ahead and spin that off real quick. So here we are, got our fan assembly off. It's just sitting down there in the shroud. So next we're gonna wanna take the tension off our belt to remove the belt. The tension over here has a 3/8 slot in it to get a 3/8 ratchet in there. So you're gonna wanna turn it clockwise or push down on it, and then you'll be able to pull the belt off. So next, oh, sorry, keep this belt up out of the way here. That'll work there. Anyways, so next we're going to remove the pump, drive, pulley, and bracket. So there's 4 more bolts. This one we took out, that held the bracket on for the electrical connector to the cooling fan there. So there's 1 more there, and that one right there, this one here, and that one way down there. So there's 4 more bolts you have to take off, and then this whole bracket assembly will come off, and then that'll give you access to the vacuum pump here, which has to come off next. So I pull all the bolts except for the top one. I pull last. I don't throw this thing dropping. Pull this last bolt out, and then you can pull the whole assembly out. And there we go. There's what that assembly looks like. So like I said, I think it's, this bolt here you pull out when you take off the electrical connector for the fan assembly, and then you pull these other four, sorry. Okay, so the next quick couple things we're gonna do, like I said, we just pulled that assembly out of there. We're gonna pull that vacuum pump out next. There's 3 8mm bolts holding that in. But first, the instructions say, pull that bolt out there and remove the oil fill tube. It says it doesn't have to, but it'll make it easier for getting these lines through here. So I'm gonna pull it out. And it also says to disconnect your FCA here. Let's see if I can get this, there it goes. So we got that disconnected. I'm gonna pull that bolt for that, and it says undo the bolt, and then you twist this thing like 120 degrees, I think it said, and that'll pop out. Just make sure to put rags wherever you don't want stuff falling into. So if you pull this out, put a rag down in there, so you're not dropping anything down in there. Okay, so I just went ahead and pulled the 4 bolts out of the vacuum pump, and that's off now. You can see the lobes in here where it goes into that gear. That's what spins this pump. So next we have to time that CP4 gear with the camshaft gear. I guess it's more important on the 2020 plus trucks because something to do with harmonics caused for a minute. So we're definitely going to do that. I think they said on, maybe it's a 17 plus. I guess I'll have to verify that. But on some of the older 6.7s, you don't have to do this. But, you know, you have the truck torn this far apart. I think I would take the extra couple minutes to set the time anyways. So I'm going to go ahead and get that, and I'll video that so you can see what marks I'm talking about. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is time the pump gear. To do this, you're going to get a 18mm 12-point socket, put it down on your crankshaft bolts, and rotate it clockwise. I almost got lucky. Mine are pretty close, not quite there. So I got to rotate a whole revolution to get it back lined up. But yep, I'm gonna use my other phone to be able to see where this is going. So I'll set you guys up on the tripod. Okay, so we did get that aligned. And just so you know, like, you can turn that thing a lot just because of all of the different gear reductions in that front cover, and it'll barely move the markings on that pump gear. Also, as you rotate the motor clockwise, the pump gear will rotate counterclockwise, so just so you're aware. So let me see if I can show you the lineup marks here. You can see I got that single mark on the cam gear facing straight up, and there's 2 marks on each side of it on that pump gear. So that's where you want to be. So now that we have our pump gear timed, I'm gonna go ahead and use a 27mm socket to break that loose, and it says just to give it a quick jolt, and it should bust that nut loose. So we'll try that out. Look at that, it worked. So make sure you are careful when removing this nut not to drop it. I don't know if it would fit in the front cover, but I really don't want to find out. Do this little trick, just put a pick in the middle of the nut and just spin it off with my finger. That way it can't drop. Alright, so that's your pump gear nut right there, 27mm flange head. Alright, next step. Okay, so now that I'm about ready to pull the CP4 out, I'm going to go through and remove these lines. Like I said, these return lines, these ones are already loose. So all I gotta do is loosen up this nut, pull those out, and then we gotta pull the high pressure ones, which actually don't get pulled all the way off the truck. So there's that fitting there, that fitting there, and then there's 3 fittings on this fuel rail, these first three, 1, 2, and 3. And you don't have to loosen this one on the passenger side of the truck. But taking those nuts I just showed you and these two hold downs, you'll be able to swing these lines out of the way back towards the turbo. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get these lines pulled out now. Set this over top of the CP4, try to keep them from falling down inside those holes. Alright, now we can pull the high pressure fuel lines. The two at the pump should be 19 millimeter, and these ones down here should be 17, yep, correct. I'm gonna try getting a crow's foot in there. I think that'll be my best approach.
One loose. Or two.
And number 3. And those aren't too tight. You probably could have got those with a stubby wrench, but you know, you got them, you might as well use them. So I use this thing. Same thing with these ones. I think I'm gonna use a crow's foot since I got them out already. I think you'd be able to get in there with a wrench, but here's number 2. Oh, sorry guys, I did miss one hold down. There's one right behind the CP4, so let me loosen that up real quick. Okay, so now all of our high pressure fuel lines should be released. Oh man. Oh man, guys, I'm sorry, I missed more of these fold downs than I thought. On this side, you gotta remove these saddles, not the actual mounting bolts. So let me go ahead and remove those. After I get these bolts pulled, I'll do a close-up again, show you guys which bolts I removed. Don't lose these little white plastic pieces that are underneath the fuel lines. You gotta put those back in, so. Okay guys, so I think in my situation, I am just gonna remove all these lines. I think they say you don't have to because usually there's a big government mandated box here that is no longer on this truck because it's a Mexico truck. So I think I'm gonna remove that line just so it's totally out of my way. Like I said, there's nothing stopping me from pulling this out other than that one flare nut. So I think I'm gonna pull it just so it's out of my way. Okay guys, so after some finagling, I got both the high pressure lines that go to the CP4 out. I was talking about possibly taking this line out so it was out of my way because I didn't have this government box here. But with these coolant hoses, I still don't think I'll be able to fish this out. So I'm just gonna do what the instructions say and twist it back towards the turbo. In order to do that, you do have to unplug this first injector, and then you can tuck this wiring harness out of the way. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then I'll be able to tuck this passenger side fuel rail line back out of the way. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that real quick. Oh, and also I was gonna show you those bolts I took out while I was here. So right here, there's 2 bolts with like the little plastic liners that go on each side of the fuel line. So they call that the saddle. So take those 2 bolts out there, 2 bolts out here, and then there's 1 more right here you take out. So just wanted to show you guys that while I had the camera up close here. Okay, so we're gonna get in here with a pick, pull this injector harness clip. So we got that pulled, push on it, and disconnect. Take the wiring harness out of my way there. Hoping that's enough room. I guess we will find out. Okay, so next on the back of the CP4, there's a little mounting plate with 3 8mm bolts holding it on. I'll show you this plate here in a second. I just want to get the last bolt out. So this plate right here, go ahead and pull this out, set it off to the side. Next we have the actual pump mounting nuts. They are a custom made extended nut. They're 13mm. Go ahead and pull those out. And at this point, if you have, you'll probably have some oil and fuel floating down in the bottom of the valley here. I just went through with some shop towels and dried as much of that up as I can, so I'm not dragging my tools through it, making a mess everywhere. So I just loosened up those 3 pump mounting nuts. I'll show you these here in a second. So this is a custom made shouldered nut they use for these. You will be reusing these on the DCR. All right guys, so we have these 3 nuts for the CP4 pulled. Next thing, now we are ready to pop the CP4 out. And what you're gonna wanna do is get a ball peen hammer right into this little divot in the center of that, and just give it a couple taps and that thing should pop right out. Just that shaft's tapered going into this gear here, so just needs a little bit of tapping to get it out. So we'll give that a couple taps and pop that thing out. All right guys, so this is the moment we've all been waiting for. I did tap on it till it popped loose, so it's ready to come out. I'm gonna pull this beveled gear out. Or at least I thought I was going to. Okay, here it goes, it's loose again. Pull the pump gear out. Set this off to the side somewhere clean. And now the main event, pulling the CP4 out. And there it is. In all of its glory. Ooh, chair slid out on me. Do a little bit of cleanup real quick. Now I know what it's like to hold a live grenade in my hand, so that's kind of cool. All right, so next we have to pull out 2 of these mounting studs. You have to pull them out from inside the front cover and do some cleanup back there. So let me take a shot of those inside this front cover and then I'll get them pulled out. Okay, so now we have to remove that bolt right there, or stud I should say, that goes to the front cover, and that one right there. I'm gonna stuff some rags in here so I don't have to worry about accidentally dropping that down in there. They're pretty long, so I mean, they should unless you drop them like that way, but we don't want to find out, so let's get those capped off. Okay, so I stuffed some shop towels down in there, filled all the gaps. I put one behind that gear that's in there too, because there is a pretty big gap behind it. So this is what I use to get them out. Stubby 15, and the socket kind of has some wobble to it on this extension here. If you had a wobble socket, it would be better. I tried using universal, but there wasn't enough room to get this in there, so this worked. Just be careful not to round those heads off on those bolts. They're decently tight, not crazy, but like I said, definitely don't round them out. So we can walk these out of here now. I got my hands on both sides. I really don't want to drop these. There's one, and that washer is captured on there too, so you shouldn't have to worry about that falling off. Let's see if we can get the second one out. So yeah, as you're loosening the bolt, just keep spinning it and angling it towards that hole. It should walk itself out for the most part. And there's the second one. So make sure you hold on to those. Those will be reused also. No, sorry. These two will not be reused. The one on the bottom, you are going to reuse, so leave that one in there. So now before we move forward, we need to inspect the back of that mounting face where that CP4 was, so we can start putting our mounting plate in for the DCR pump. This video is going to be a little upside down, but you can see that light surface rust on there. We just want to clean up that the best we can. So I'm probably just going to take some parts cleaner and a Scotch-Brite, scuff that up really good, clean everything that we can so it's nice and flat for that mounting plate. Yeah, as you can see how much that cleaned up. I just did it really light with a Scotch-Brite. I'm not quite done yet. I'm gonna get a little more on that stud, but yeah, don't get crazy back here with sandpaper or no 90-degree DAs or nothing. Just get any crusties out of there. If you need to use a pick to get on that stud, and just make sure that surface is good and flat. Okay, so now we get into the fun stuff, the holy grail for the 6.7 DCR pump. We'll leave that in the bag for now because we're not ready for that. But I got the rest of the parts laid out over here. New fuel lines. This is the part we're gonna need next. Is this mounting plate here. Yep, all the new fuel lines, hardware, Loctite, O-ring lubricant. I mean, they give you it all in here. So let's go ahead and get started with this mounting plate. So now that we have the mounting surface all clean and prepped ready for this stuff, we're gonna grab this plate here and these two tapered bolts. These are gonna thread in to where we took these CP4 mounting studs out of. So, and then after you get that plate all mounted, these studs thread into this plate. There's a short thread and a long thread. So the short threads thread into this plate here and here. And then you reuse that bottom stud for this one also. So let's move it over to the truck. So before we install this on the truck, we want to take our countersink bolts here and just check the threads on the back of where the CP4 was mounted, just to make sure we don't have to chase them. So we'll go through and run these in real quick to make sure our threads are nice and clean. And if they are, then we can slide this plate in place over the remaining stud. And then we put Loctite on the threads and lubricant on that countersink. So let's go ahead and keep moving. Okay, so I'm gonna try to film this. I got one hand holding my phone and one hand trying to drop this plate down in here. So like I said, mounting surface is all clean. We checked the threads, so that plate's gonna go down in there like that. I'm gonna apply some Loctite and lubricant to these countersinks, and I'll be right back. All right, so there I just have those started. I just started them by hand, but I got blue Loctite and oiled up those tapered areas on the countersink. So now we are going to evenly tighten them up until they touch, and then we're gonna torque those to 25 foot-pounds. And those are our T45 Torx bit. Alright, so I went through and ran those down until they touched, snug them up a little bit. Now we got the torque wrench set to 25 foot-pounds. .3. .4. Beautiful. So now that center bore of that plate is nice and flush with that center bore in the block. So now I'm going to grab the two mounting studs, put some blue Loctite on those, and we'll thread those in. Okay, so we have our studs, a little bit of blue Loctite on there, and you want to put on the short threaded side, and then hand thread them into that mounting plate. Just hand thread them until they stop. And that's it. All right, so now we got the pump opened up and we got sitting here on the bench. So the instructions say now we gotta time this because this does not have a keyed slot like the CP4 does. So I'll show you the instructions here. Place the fuel pump flat on a bench, you know, in this orientation, and rotate the pump shaft until the offset drilling in the nose of the pump shaft points towards 6 o'clock. So what they mean is, so this is your center point here. This is your offset drilling point in the nose of the pump. So we want that to be straight up and down. So when you got it on the bench, just make sure you hold that flat like that, which I already did. And then I took this 90-degree thing I use for fabricating and ran it through the center point of those two holes, which the camera doesn't do a good job picking it up, but it is straight up and down, so this pump is ready to move over to the truck. Also, before we do take this pump over to the truck, we want to lubricate the pump's pilot flange, which is this, the flange O-ring with clean engine oil or O-ring lubricant. So I'm gonna go ahead and oil this up real quick before we bring it over. For the noise, my heater just kicked on in my garage. It's winter in Michigan, so you gotta love it. So now we are ready to drop this pump into place here. I'll make sure we get this fuel line out of our way without bending it. And also they said on certain trucks you may have to bend the corner of this heat shield on the passenger side, which it looks like that one's already pushed out of the way, honestly. So yeah, let's see if we can get this thing down in here. It's not light, by the way. This thing's pretty heavy. So we got that. Move my rags here real quick. Okay, so you want to push that as far as you can until you'll feel it and hear it hit the block. You don't want to pull it in with the bolts because that could cause a risk of it going in crooked. So I just heard it bottom out. I got it pushed all the way in. So now we need to verify our timing on our. Well, first we need to slide the pump gear on and then verify the timing with the pump. The instructions can probably show this better than I can. So when we put the pump gear back on, make sure we line up our timing marks, and it is showing that the offset drilling hole should be at 7 o'clock. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the gear and slide it on and verify our timing. Here you can see the new DCR pump in its location. Before I go over putting the pump gear on and timing it, the instructions do say to reinstall the CP4 nuts and hand tighten them evenly. So we'll do that real quick. When you go to reinstall this pump gear, these are helical cut gears, meaning they run on an angle. These are not straight cut gears. So when you put it on, it's going to want to twist. So just remember that when you go to line up your marks, that this is going to want to twist when you put it on. Okay, so you can see here, my timing marks are lined up. Like I said, you have to start a little bit offset from where you think you want to be, because when you push that gear in there, it's going to twist on you because of the beveled gears. So make sure that your marks line up perfect. And then also, just like the DCR instructions say, my offset drilling point here is at point at 7 o'clock. So it looks like I am in time. So also looking at the instructions, it does say that a future design change to the DCR will add a pin to the shaft, so you can time it just like the old CP4. So just make sure to look at your DCR pump before going along with this video, because you know, depending on when you're watching this video, there could be updates to the DCR pump, so something to watch out for. So now that we have the pump in, the gear in, it's timed. Torque the OEM fuel pump drive gear nut to the DCR pump shaft to 60 foot-pounds. Hold the engine to prevent turning if necessary. It says typically compression should hold the engine well enough to achieve 60 foot-pounds. I did watch another video before I started doing this myself, and they had to hold the engine, so we'll try it out. Okay, sorry guys, you just missed me torquing the pump nut. I thought I hit record. I took a picture instead. So yeah, like I said, I hand threaded that thing on there and then set my torque wrench at 60 foot-pounds. Torque that. I did end up having to use my 12.18 millimeter on the crank to keep the engine from rolling over. So that's good and tight now, and we can move on to the next step. Okay, so the next step, it says to torque the 13 millimeter old CP4 nuts down. Let me double check the torque spec again. Okay, so it says torque all three to 18 foot-pounds, and it is highlighted and in red, do not over torque these nuts. So I think you shouldn't over torque the nuts, but it also says to start with the bottom one first. Take it slow. Yeah, that's why I wanted to go slow, because you can't see. 18.2, right on the money. Lose this extension real quick. $17.7. We'll go a little bit more. Perfect. $18 on the dot. Next step. Okay, so the next step, we have our line that goes to the driver's side port on the pump, and it goes over to the driver's side fuel rail. This is the shorter of the two lines. It says to install this one first. Says to hand tighten these nuts first, and then torque the one on the pump to 26 foot-pounds. So we'll go ahead and route this thing real quick. Adjust the camera a little bit here so you can see where I'm going with it. There we go, that's better. All right, so this shorter line is going to go on the third port on the driver's side fuel rail. Remove the cap off the DCR. And thread this on. Okay. So those are both hand tight now. And then it says before installing the line to the passenger side, to torque that 26 foot-pounds. I don't know why it says to do that right now, but that's what the instructions say, so we're gonna do that right now. Let me, I'm gonna get a crow's foot on there and use the torque wrench on that. Okay, so this new line is a little bit smaller. Those were 19 millimeters before, and now it's a 17. So double check the torque spec. Not to pump, 26 foot-pounds prior to install. Okay, so let's see if we can get this on here. 26.1. That'll work for me. All right, so now we're going to drive the, now we're going to grab the longer passenger side port line that goes to the DCR pump. And same thing, it says to, let's see, which way does this have to face? I think this way, yep. Okay, so yeah, it says to, same thing, install these, and then hand tighten them, and then tighten down the side to the pump to 26 foot-pounds. C for routing, and this goes to the second port on the driver's side fuel rail. Okay, we gotta do some fishing here. Okay, sorry, I didn't realize my face is right in front of the camera. So I got it hand threaded onto the driver's side rail. Taking the cap off the DCR pump now. Going to hand thread the nut onto the pump. And wiggle it around a little bit. Okay, so now we can torque the nut on the pump to 26 foot-pounds. Okay, so now I'm torquing the nut on the passenger side port of the pump. There it is. 25.5. We'll call that good. All right. So now we have to install a bracket on the back of the pump, just like the bracket that we took off the back of the CP4 for the mounting locations for these lines. So it's just it's a different bracket that comes provided with the DCR. So let me go grab that real quick. Okay, so next, this is the bracket that comes with the DCR. We're going to use 2 of your factory bolts that you use to take out the plate off the back of the CP4, and you're going to thread those into the nuts that hold the pump to the block, and that'll go underneath one of the lines, and then one of your brackets to support your lines will thread into there. So let me get this threaded on here, and I'll show you a picture of where it's supposed to be. It is pretty tight in there with the lines, so I'm going to use a ratcheting wrench to tighten these up. Okay, those are good and tight. Let me see if I can get this in here and show you what I'm talking about. So this line right here is one I torqued down already, and there's a pretty decent gap between these two. I'm gonna grab that little spacer and see how it fits under there. If there's a big gap, I might loosen that nut back up and see how it lines up. We'll come back to that. Okay, so next, let's see if we can get this to stay right here. It says, I can't get my camera to face down far enough, but next it says this line here, this is the crossover line that goes to the passenger side head. So it just says to place that back in place, hand tighten that nut again, and then we can start installing the saddles for these lines. It says to start with the one that goes behind the pump down in that threaded hole, and then install these two for the triple lines, and then after that torque these 3 remaining ports to 26 foot-pounds. So I'm gonna get started with that. Okay, so I have my saddle brackets in place, all hand tight. Now I'm going to go through and tighten the remaining 3 fuel line fittings to 26 foot-pounds. Let me see if I got a better spot for you guys because it's kind of in my way. Yeah, it's not a good spot either. It's hard to find a flat spot in this thing. That might work. You guys can see what I'm doing here. So yeah, those 3 lines in the front, I'm gonna torque these to 26 foot-pounds. Let's start on the 3rd one. I'm gonna need more extensions. Or just one really long one. Check these, make sure I wasn't hitting nothing. Glad I checked. I think I was running into something with the crow's foot before it was actually torquing. So let me check these other ones now. Yeah, that one was really loose. Okay. So those are all torqued to 26 foot-pounds now. Now it says to torque the saddle bracket bolts. There's 2, 4, 5 saddle bracket bolts. Torque those to 89 inch-pounds. Let's do that real quick. Okay, yep, those are not going anywhere. Okay, so next it says to install the vacuum pump. I did get a new vacuum pump seal just because I know the older ones are common for leaking. I know these newer ones have a different seal that aren't as common, but still, we're here, I'm replacing it. It's not that expensive of a seal. So I'll go ahead and grab that. And it does say to put glue thread locker on all 4 bolts and torque them to, it's only 89 inch-pounds. Yeah, definitely do not skip the thread locker, because that's why these older ones leaked, is because the bolts would walk out. So thread locker is very important here. We'll grab that and thread that in. Okay, so I got the vacuum pump in there with 1 bolt right now. I didn't put Loctite on that one. I'm gonna put Loctite on these 3, tighten these 3 up, and then pull that back out, put Loctite on it, and, you know, swap them around.
Yeah, so when you go and install that pump, just make sure you line up the lobes inside the vacuum pump with the lobes on the gear from the fuel pump. Pump is leaking oil, I mean. I'm going down the front cover. That's what I didn't want. Okay. Wipe up as much of that residual oil as you can. And we're going to split these up right now, and then we're going to torque them to 89 inch-pounds.
Alright, so I just pulled that last bolt back out. Applying my blue Loctite. And back in the hole. Now we will torque these to 89 inch-pounds. All right, all those are torqued down, thread locker on all of them. Should be good to go. So next we're going to install the fan hub pulley bracket assembly. I don't know what you want to call this thing, but that's what we're installing. Let's see what they call it in the book. Install the cooling fan hub mounting assembly. Yeah, that's what I said. Okay. So we do have to leave one of these out for the fan bracket that goes to the fan, holds the wiring and stuff, and it actually is labeled on here, arrow pointing to this hole, says fan bolt. So don't install this one. We can install the rest of them and torque them to 18 foot-pounds. And one thing to mention is, before you put that bracket on, make sure your fan wiring harness is in between these two brackets where it needs to route through to get to the fan clutch assembly.
Alright, and those were 13mm bolts. Let's see that. 18.1.
Okay, so after we get this fan hub mount assembly installed and torqued, it says to put the fan on next. I put the belt on next. That's the order they had you take it apart, so I don't know why they would have you assemble it different. I put the belt on first, and then now I'm going to install the fan hub. Just make sure, again, when you're routing your fan belt, that your wiring is where it needs to be for the fan. We'll go ahead and lift this fan hub up in here now. And then don't forget to put your fan bracket back in the correct location also. Okay, so we installed the last bolts going into our center hub assembly bracket, torquing that, and I reinstalled the clip for the wiring harness, plugged the wiring harness back in, and locked the connector on there. So the only thing I have to do now is torque down the fan clutch nut. So I want to just bring you guys in here real quick. It's hard to get a good angle to shoot everything from a tripod, but here's the reassembly. Like I said, so these bigger bolts for this bracket, 5 of them, torque those down to 18 foot-pounds. This one here is the one that holds your bracket going to your fan. And don't forget to push your Christmas tree in right here. Make sure it's pushed in all the way. Connect your clip and push down your connector. And then we're going to tighten the fan clutch nut. Okay, so we have our fan clutch installed, belt installed. All the electrical connections are hooked up for the fan. We can plug in the FCA on the new DCR pump. Make sure that seat's good. Lock that clip down. That's good to go. Okay, so now we're back over at the bench. This is our old return lines from the CP4. So we need to pull the sensor off. And, you know, depending on your year, you might have 2 sensors there, but this one, there's only 1. And they also give you adapters and plugs, depending on what model year you have to go on the new lines. And then the other thing is you have to reuse this bracket here. So I'm gonna get a trim tool and pop that metal bracket off. They give you a new plastic clip, but you have to reuse the metal bracket. Okay, so you can see we have our new line here. I installed the sensor, tightened it up. On my truck, or I guess I should say the truck I'm doing, I only needed the sensor and a plug, so I tightened both of those up. I have the clip in place. It does have a bigger side and a smaller side, so I just gotta clip it, but I'm gonna wait till I carry this over the truck to make sure it's in the right place, and then this should get installed on the bottom, but I'm gonna wait till I get it over by the truck to verify it's in the right position, so we'll do that now. Okay, sorry guys, I'm trying to wrap up everything I can tonight. It's like 1:30 in the morning right now, and everything's dead. My lights are dying, my phone's dying, so but I got the return lines. I didn't torque any of this yet. This is snug down onto the DCR pump, and make sure you oil the O-rings on this before you tighten it down. I got my bracket installed here. There's another hole down right here. I have tightened up, but not torqued yet, right there. I snapped this line on, and I snapped that line that goes to the back of the fuel rail on the driver's side on. So we're pretty close as far as being done with the fuel portion. I'm not gonna put the rest of this truck together right now because I'm gonna powder coat the aluminum intake here, the hot and cold side pipe, and the owner just went ahead and confirmed that he wants to do a CCV route while we're here too. So I'm not gonna get much farther on this truck right now, but I will do the rest of the install when I get all that stuff complete, and I'll do a video of the CCV route while I have this all apart too. So let me, I'll button up what I can right now, and then the rest of the video will be another day when I get the rest of the parts for this thing. Okay guys, so for tonight, for this video, I'm done as far as I can. One thing don't forget to do is plug in that one injector you unplugged in the front. So I did that. I reinstalled my oil filled tube, torqued my bolts for the fuel line. Everything's connected there, and I checked these to make sure they're tight, those two, now that I have it installed on the truck. That's all good. So the next thing will be, after this, would be reinstalling the upper and lower intake, and then the fuel bowl, and then, you know, hot side, cold side, and air intake. So like I said, that'll be done another day because I gotta powder coat some stuff, and I'm getting rid of the crankcase vent filter on this truck. So stay tuned for, I guess I'll do this video separate. There won't be too much on it, but I'll do a separate video on the crankcase vent. So stay tuned, watch for that video. And then for this video, it's just gonna jump right to me installing the rest of the stuff, but really it's gonna be a couple days later. So see you soon. Okay, so now that I have the intake installed, I'm gonna install the fuel filter housing first, hook up all my lines, and then I'll do my hot side pipe and cold side pipe, and then finally the air intake. And then hopefully we can prime the system and fire this thing up. Okay, so as you can see there, we have the fuel filter installed with all the lines hooked up. Everything lined up great, fit great. So we're gonna move on to the hot side pipe and cold side pipe, and then throw the air intake on. All right, so we got the entire truck put back together. This powder coat turned out really nice on here. It looks really sharp. So I'm gonna go through and just reread the instructions, make sure I do the priming part right. I read them, but it was, a couple days ago because I had to do the sandblast and powder coat on these pipes and intakes. So I'm gonna reread over that, and then I'll jump back into it and show you guys the priming process. All right, guys, so to prime the fuel system, it says to turn the key on for 30 seconds, and then turn it back off. Do that 5 times, and then it says you should be able to try to fire the truck up. If you have a push button start, just push the button without your foot on the brake and let it run for 30 seconds, turn it back off, and then repeat the same thing 5 times over again. So go ahead and do the first prime here and make sure we don't have any fuel leaks or nothing. All right, it's on. Look underneath the hood. I can hear the fuel cycling and the air getting pushed into the tank, so that's a good sign. I don't see anything leaking. When I did the S&S the first time on this truck, I had a line pop off, and it was very obvious. I mean, there's fuel spraying everywhere, so doesn't look like we have any leaks here. I'm gonna kick that fan off real quick. All right, guys, so I'm on my last key cycle, and I noticed after like the 3rd key cycle, you can hear the fuel pump running. Sorry, low tire pressure. You can hear the fuel pump running, and it was actually cutting off before 30 seconds, but I still left the key on for 30 seconds. So, yeah, we're looking to let this one run through, and then we'll do a startup video. All right, guys, so cycled it 5 times. I'm going to just look over everything real quick under the hood, just make sure you don't have any leaks, and then we should be good to fire this thing up. So, like I said, I don't see any really obvious high pressure leaks because, or low pressure I should say, but there'd be fuel spraying. So, not seeing any fuel leaks down here, none at the top of those lines. So I think we're good to fire it up. I'll do a little better inspection without the camera, and then I'll fire it up. All right, guys, moment of truth. Let's see how it does. There we go. Check for leaks again. You want to make sure to check your, there's a plug you put right here. You want to make sure to check that fitting here you put in. All your fittings you broke loose on your fuel rail. Make sure you check all that, make sure it's leaking. And it's over here. Don't see any fuel down in the valley, nothing. So I think we're pretty good. So I've had quite a few people comment on some of my other videos saying that they like when I do like this tool layout of everything you need to do the job. So I already, the job's already done. I'm taking this video afterwards, but these are all the tools I used. Most of this stuff is pretty standard, like, pliers, your standard sockets, ratchets, torque wrench, breaker bar. This is a trim removal clip tool. So yeah, we'll just go through the list real quick. So 1/2-inch torque wrench, 1/2-inch breaker bar, 3/8 torque wrench, 1/2-inch, 3/8 and 1/4-inch drive ratchets, trim removal clip tool. You don't need an E-ratchet, but it makes the job way easier. Various length extensions. I'll point out some specialty sockets in case you don't have them. You will need a Torx 40, Torx 45 socket, and 17 and 19 millimeter crow's foot. If you have a ratcheting wrench, 8 millimeter ratcheting wrench is nice to have. Depending on what model year you have, you might need a 5/16 fuel line removal tool. And also for the crank bolts, it's a 12.18 millimeter. Most standard socket sets should have that, but just in case you don't. And then Allen sockets, if you don't have them, they're nice to have. And then some of the bigger sockets I used was a 24 for some of the sensors, and a 27 is for the pump gear nut. And then, like I said, your standard pliers, a hammer, and if you don't have the fan clutch removal tools, you need either an air hammer or I think it's a 47 millimeter it's supposed to be, but 1 7/8 is really close and like 30 thousandths off. So that's what I used, and it worked fine for me. So that's basically the tools you need. That way, like I said, you can look through this list, and if there's something, oh, I don't have that, you can run and go grab it before you get started on the job. So figured I'd do that for you guys. Like I said, people in the past have appreciated it, so I'll keep doing it on my videos.